Hello dear students, this video is made for BA Part 3rd students of English Literature. In this video, we are going to study Thomas Gray's poem Elegy written in Country Churchyard. As we have discussed in our previous video that in this poem the poet is sitting in a churchyard nearby England and he is mourning about the death. He is lamenting on the death of the village rude forefathers of the village, and they were lying in their graves. What were they thinking? These all points are mentioned in this poem. So on your screen you can see the stanzas of the poem. Now we shall start with the stanza. The struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse's flame. As we have discussed earlier in last stanza, that in this poem the poet is saying that not only does the poverty of the villagers prevent them from developing the virtues that would get them remembered in the history books, it also keeps them away from committing crimes. So in this stanza he is also talking about the same thing, that he is listing what are the things that the villagers were kept from. So they were kept away from the struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide. They didn't ever try to fight with the struggling tactics to hide any type of truth, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, and they never faced to to hide their shame after committing any crime. When one is ashamed of his deeds, they never got the chance to get hide their any of their shame, any of their shameful deeds. Here ingenious shame means innocent shame. To quench the blushes of ingenious shame, blushes here are the expressions of doing any crime. So here the poet is talking about the things, about the activities that the villagers were kept away by their lot, by their destiny, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse's flame. Here you can see that luxury and pride, these are personified. And in here in line number 4, with incense kindled at the muse's flame. Here incense means pan, and muse is, as you all are the students of English literature, and as you know that muse is the goddess of poetry. So here the poet is saying that, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse's flame. Every rude forefather of this village were kept away from doing any type of crimes, and they were also kept away from kindling or from writing the poetry of flattery, poetry of any type of false poetry. The poor villagers also don't have the chance to use fancy and flattering word to build a metaphorical shrine to the luxury and pride. So here the poet wants us to convey that these were the talented persons, but they never got a chance to flatter or to fancy any type of poetry that can make the shrine of luxury and pride, that can flatter the persons of luxury and pride, the person of aristocratic families, and they never got a chance to pen their poetry in the praise of muses, goddess muse. In our next stanza, that starts from the lines, far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, their sober wishes never learned to stray. Along the cool, sequestered vale of life, they kept the noiseless tenor of their way. Here, the poet is saying that far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, here the who are living in these graves, who are lying in these graves, these are the people who are far from the busy crowd. Madding here means busy crowd, ignoble strife. Strife means struggles or any type of hustle and bustle. So these are the people who are living here in their graves. They are far from the city's crowd, and their sober wishes never learn to stay. Here the poet is saying that although they are far from the city's ignoble stripes, they are far from the busy city life, but their wishes are so sober that they never learn to be away from their heart. Along the cool sequestered vale of life, sequestered here means secluded. So the poet is saying that along the cool sequestered vale of life, they kept the noiseless tenor of their way. They remained at the countryside, and their type of life, their method of life, their pattern of life was so cool and so secluded that they kept themselves from that noiseless crowd of the cities. They kept their life tenor as noiseless as compared to the city life. And here, one surprising point in this stanza is that the first line of the stanza, far from the madding crowd, is also the title of a famous novelist, Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy applied this line's first phrase of the line, far from the madding crowd, as his famous novel title. Yet even next stanza starts from the lines, yet even these bones from insult to protect, some frail memorial is still erected high. With uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decade, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Here the poet is saying about the respect of these graves. Here he is saying that although these bones, these tombs are not ornamented, are not decorated with highly stated scriptures or epitaphs, but these bones are tried to protect from the insults, and some frail memorials, uh, some types of humble monuments are erected on their graves, which may not be able to withstand the ravages of time. With uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decade, here he is saying that their tombs are, although their tombs are ornamented or decorated, but these tombs are decked with the frail memorial or humble monumental sculptures. On these sculptures, with uncouth rhymes means crude verses, not very sophisticated or refined verses, are engraved uh, on their memorials, on the graves, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. But these frail memorials also requesting the passers-by to tribute their sigh at these graves. So here he is showing the simplicity of their life, not only of their life but also after death. Their tombs and their memorials are so simple as they were at their when they were living, when they were uh, when they were life full of life. Their life was so simple, and after their death their memorials are also very simple, but they but the frail memorials are able to request the passers by to show a tribute at their graves. Next stanza, their names, their years, spelled by the unlettered muse, the place of fame and elegy supply, and many a holy text around she strews, that teach the rustic moralists to die. Here, the poet is saying that on their memorial, on their frail memorials, on their monuments, what are engraved? There are engraved their names, their years. Their years here indicates the year of their birth and the year of their death. So their monuments are also very flimsy, very frail, but these memorials, these sculptures that are engraved on their graves, they indicate their name, they indicate their lifespan, and these are done by the unlettered muse. Here the poet is using a metaphor to the illiterate person of that countryside, and he is using a name that is unlettered muse. Here the poet is also using irony, that muse is the goddess of poetry, so how can the goddess be said unlettered? So here the poet is using irony as well, and he is saying that these tombs have on their epitaph their name, their lifespan, and these monuments can also acquire the place of fame and elegy, and many a holy text around she strews. Here she referred to the unlettered muse, to the illiterate person, and he is saying that many a holy text around she strews. Strews means add here, that teach the rustic moralist to die. So their epitaph, their monuments, although their monuments are frail, but they have enough information about the dead person, these have engraved their names, their lifespan, and some of the holy texts from the Bible that can teach the rustic people about the philosophy of death. In next stanza, for who to dumb forgetfulness a prey, these displeasing anxious being ever resigned, left the warm cheerful day, nor cast one longing lingering look behind. Asking a question, the speaker is asking that who is going to give up, means resign their life, means being who is going to give up their life, which is both pleasing and anxious. As you can see in this second line, this pleasing anxious being means the life that is both pleasing and anxious. Then who is ready to give up this type of life or to leave the warm environment of the earth? Means here the poet is talking about the grave, the burial place. He is saying that who is going to give up or leave the warm environment of the earth without looking behind them at what they leave behind, especially someone who, like the villagers, is going to be forgotten when he or she is dead. So here the poet is asking the reader a question, that who is ready to be the prey of be the prey of predator. Predator here is used for forgetfulness. So forgetfulness is personified, and forgetfulness is used here as predator, and the prey of this predator is the rustic people of the village, that who are lying in the graves now. So here the poet is using personification, and in last line of this stanza, nor cast one longing lingering, here you can see the alliteration in longing and lingering. So the poet want us to convey that nobody want from this village, from the in the people who are lying in these graves, no one of them is ready to give up this life of pleasing and anxious life, and they don't want to leave the warm environment of the earth, and they don't want to be the prey of the predator forgetfulness. In our next stanza, on some fond breast the parting soul relies, some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes live their wonted fires. Here the poet is describing the feelings, the emotions of the dead ones. Here he is saying that on some fond breast the parting soul relies. The people who are dead and who are buried in these graves, they were also fond of to to rely on their soul. Their parting soul was also fond of to rely on the breast of their loved ones. Some pious drops the closing eye require. Closing eye means dead people. These people, there is going to be dead people, also require some pious drops. Pious drops here means the tears shed at the approach of death, that are also indicative of attachment and sorrow at the imminent parting. So these people, as the people from the city, as they also want, they are also fond of the breast of their loved ones. Likewise these rustic forefathers are also fond of, uh, at the time of parting, they are also fond of some tears shed by their loved ones. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes live their wonted fires. Wonted fire here means accustomed passions. So these are the people who are now the voice of nature, because they have become the part of this nature. So these are the cries of the voice of nature, these are the voice of nature from the tomb, and also they are the ashes. Now their bodies has become ashes, their lives, they are also fond of the accustomed passions from their loved ones. So in this video, as you can see that we have discussed about 6 stanzas of this poem. In our next video we will also discuss about the further remaining part of this poem. You all students are guided to make the notes, to learn to listen the video carefully, and to make critical comments on this poems, various stanzas that we have discussed in this video. So that's all for today. Thank you all.